The words that ended my marriage. I found the love letters hidden in my wife's jewelry box while looking for our marriage certificate. The same marriage certificate I needed to prove to the bank that I wasn't stealing from my own account. But these weren't old letters from our dating days. They were recent, passionate, and addressed to someone called my darling Michael. The problem? My name is David, and my wife had been having an affair with our marriage counselor. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I read through letter after letter describing their beautiful connection and how she'd never felt this alive, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The dates on these letters matched exactly with our therapy sessions. Sessions where Dr. Michael Harrison had been helping us work through our communication issues. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one. For 6 months, I'd been paying $200 per session for a therapist to sleep with my wife while pretending to save our marriage. Every time he asked me to dig deeper into my emotional walls, he was literally breaking down the walls between him and my wife. Every homework exercise he gave us was designed to push me away from her and pull her closer to him. The last letter was dated yesterday. In it, she wrote, "After tonight's session with David, I'm ready to tell him everything. You were right. He's not capable of the depth of love you've shown me. He's just a provider, not a partner. I can't wait to start our new life together." Tonight's session, the one where she'd looked me in the eye and said those words that had been haunting me. "You're nothing more than a co-parent to me, not my real match." It hadn't been a spontaneous realization. It had been a scripted breakup, coached by the man who was sleeping with her, paid for with my money. I took photos of every letter, every receipt, every piece of evidence I could find. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it and waited. She came home an hour later, humming softly, the same tune she used to hum when we were happy. Except now I knew she was humming it because she was happy about leaving me. "How was your book club?" I asked, knowing full well there was no book club. "Oh, you know how it is. Just catching up with the girls." She smiled, that practiced smile I'd been seeing for months. "How was your evening?" "Productive. I found some interesting reading material myself." Her smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "That's nice, honey. I'm going to take a shower." As I listened to the water running upstairs, I made some calls. To a divorce attorney, to the state licensing board, to a private investigator, and to someone else. Someone whose involvement would make this story much more interesting than my wife and her therapist had planned. You see, Dr. Michael Harrison wasn't just violating professional ethics by sleeping with his patient. He was violating something much more personal. His wife, Jennifer, had called me 3 weeks ago, asking if I'd noticed any changes in my wife's behavior, because Michael had been acting strange lately. I'd brushed off her concerns, thinking she was just being paranoid. Now I realized she'd been reaching out because she suspected something, which meant I wasn't the only spouse being betrayed. I called Jennifer back. "I think we need to meet," I said. "I have something to show you." The next morning, I met Jennifer at a coffee shop downtown. She was younger than I'd expected, with tired eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. When I showed her the letters, her face went through the same cycle of emotions I'd experienced: shock, hurt, anger, and finally cold determination. "I knew something was wrong," she said, staring at her husband's name written in my wife's handwriting. "He's been working late, taking weekend workshops that don't exist, claiming he needed space to process his own emotional growth." "How long have you been married?" 2 years. We have a 6-month-old daughter." Her voice cracked slightly. "He's been cheating on me with your wife while I'm home with our baby." That's when I learned something that made this betrayal even more twisted. Dr. Harrison had been specifically targeting married couples in his practice, identifying vulnerable marriages, and systematically seducing the wives while collecting payment from the husbands. Jennifer had found evidence of at least 3 other affairs over the past year. This wasn't just about my marriage. This was a predator with a license to destroy families. "I have an idea," I said, "but it's going to require both of us to act like nothing's wrong for a few more days." Jennifer wiped her tears and looked at me with steel in her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" The plan was simple but devastating. My wife and Dr. Harrison thought they were so clever, conducting their affair right under my nose during therapy sessions. They had no idea that tonight's session was going to be very different from what they expected. I arrived at Dr. Harrison's office that evening for what my wife thought would be our final session together, the one where she'd deliver the scripted breakup her lover had coached her through. She was already there, sitting in her usual spot, looking nervous but excited. "David," Dr. Harrison greeted me with his practiced professional smile. "Thank you for coming. I know this is difficult, but I think tonight we can make some real progress." "I hope so," I said, sitting down. "I'm ready to be completely honest about everything." My wife shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't part of the script. "That's wonderful," Dr. Harrison said. "Honesty is the foundation of any healthy relationship. Sarah, would you like to start by sharing what you've been feeling lately?" Sarah, my wife, looked at him with uncertainty. They'd clearly rehearsed this moment, but my unexpected enthusiasm for honesty was throwing her off. "Well," she began hesitantly, "I've been thinking a lot about what we discussed in our individual sessions." "Individual sessions?" I interrupted. "When did you start having individual sessions?" The room went silent. Dr. Harrison and Sarah exchanged glances. "It's not uncommon for couples therapy to include some individual work," Dr. Harrison said smoothly. "Sometimes people need space to explore their feelings without their partner present." "Interesting. How many individual sessions have you had, Sarah?" She was sweating now. A few, just to work through some personal issues." "Personal issues like falling in love with our therapist?" The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Harrison's professional mask slipped for the first time since I'd known him. "David, I think you're misunderstanding." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and started reading from one of Sarah's letters. "My darling Michael, every moment away from you feels like an eternity. Today's session was torture, sitting there pretending David means anything to me, while all I could think about was your hands on my body." Sarah went white. Dr. Harrison shot to his feet. "This is highly inappropriate. I think we should end this session." "Sit down, Michael." The voice came from behind him. Dr. Harrison spun around to see his wife, Jennifer, standing in the doorway, holding their 6-month-old daughter. "Jennifer, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to watch my husband explain to his patient's husband why he's been fucking her in our marital bed while I take care of our baby." The room exploded into chaos. Sarah started crying. Dr. Harrison started stammering excuses, and Jennifer started reading from her own collection of evidence. Bank records showing hotel charges, phone records showing hundreds of calls between Sarah and Michael, even photos she'd taken of them together. "You want to know what's really sick?" Jennifer continued, bouncing the baby who'd started to fuss. "He's been doing this to other couples too. The Johnsons, the Millers, the Garcias, all his patients. He's been destroying marriages for sport while collecting payment from the husbands he's betraying." "That's not true," Dr. Harrison protested weakly. "Then explain this," I said, pulling out another folder. "These are copies of your appointment records, cross-referenced with your credit card statements. Every affair you've had corresponds with couples therapy sessions. You're not a therapist. You're a predator with a degree." Sarah was sobbing now, the reality of what she'd been part of finally hitting her. "I thought you loved me," she whispered to Dr. Harrison. "Love you?" Jennifer laughed bitterly. "Sweetheart, you're patient number 4 this year. He told the Miller woman the same thing 6 months ago, right before her husband filed for divorce, and she had a nervous breakdown." Dr. Harrison was backing toward the door, but I wasn't done. "The state licensing board is very interested in your therapeutic techniques, Michael. Turns out using your position to seduce vulnerable patients is frowned upon. Who would have thought? And my lawyer is very interested in your assets," Jennifer added. "Turns out, when you commit adultery and professional misconduct, it affects divorce settlements. Funny how that works." The session that was supposed to end my marriage instead ended Dr. Harrison's career and his marriage. Within a week, his license was suspended pending investigation. Within a month, 3 other couples had come forward with similar stories. Within 6 months, he was facing criminal charges and had lost everything. As for Sarah and me, there was nothing left to save. The woman I'd thought I married had never existed. She'd been an act, performed while she pursued her real interest behind my back. The divorce was straightforward since she documented her own adultery in those love letters. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Sarah called me crying. Dr. Harrison had been arrested for fraud and tax evasion. Apparently, his predatory behavior extended beyond therapy into his business practices. The romantic life she'd dreamed of with him evaporated when FBI agents raided his office. "I made such a mistake," she sobbed over the phone. "I threw away everything for someone who was just using me." "Yes, you did," I agreed calmly. "Can we try again? Can we work through this?" "Sarah, you spent 6 months planning to leave me while sleeping with our therapist. You let me pay for sessions where he coached you through betraying me. You wrote love letters to another man while sharing a bed with me. What exactly is there to work through?" I was confused. He manipulated me. He gave you what you wanted, an excuse to leave. The manipulation was just the method. The desire to leave was already there. She hung up but called back an hour later, and the next day, and the day after that. For someone who'd claimed I was nothing more than a co-parent, she seemed awfully interested in getting back together now that her backup plan had imploded. I never answered another call. A year later, I ran into Jennifer at a park with my kids. She was there with her daughter, who was now walking and laughing as she chased butterflies. Jennifer looked healthier, happier, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "How are you doing?" I asked. "Better than I ever thought possible," she said, watching her daughter play. "Turns out getting rid of a lying, cheating predator improves your mental health dramatically. Who could have predicted that?" We sat on a bench while our kids played, two people who'd been betrayed by the same con artist, both of us stronger for having survived it. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't found out?" Jennifer asked. "I try not to, but I know one thing. I'd still be paying him to destroy my life while thinking it was my fault." "That's the worst part," she agreed. "He made us think we were the problem, that we weren't good enough, weren't meeting our partner's needs, when really he was the one creating the problems he pretended to solve." As I watched my kids playing, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Sarah, not at Dr. Harrison, not at the situation. I was grateful. Grateful that Sarah had shown me who she really was before I wasted more years on someone who saw me as expendable. Grateful that Dr. Harrison's arrogance had led him to document his own crimes. Grateful that Jennifer had reached out, because together we'd been able to stop a predator who was destroying families for profit. Most of all, I was grateful to be free. Free from a marriage where I was nothing more than a provider. Free from therapy sessions designed to gaslight me into accepting blame for someone else's betrayal. Free from the exhausting work of trying to earn love from someone who'd already given it to someone else. The woman who told me I was nothing more than a co-parent had done me the biggest favor of my life. She'd freed me to find someone who would see me as everything I actually was. 2 years later, I'm engaged to someone who's never needed a therapist to tell her how to love me. Someone who sees partnership as building together, not tearing each other down. Someone who would never dream of letting another person coach her through betraying me. Sarah is still single, still dealing with the legal and financial consequences of her choices. Dr. Harrison is in prison, his victims finally getting justice. Jennifer remarried last year to someone who treats her like the queen she deserves to be. And me? I learned something valuable about the difference between someone who needs you and someone who chooses you. Sarah needed me for financial security, for social status, for co-parenting. But she never chose me, not really. She was always looking for something better, something more exciting, something that required less effort on her part. Real love doesn't need manipulation to survive. Real love doesn't require professional coaching to express itself. Real love doesn't create elaborate plans to destroy what it claims to want to save. When someone shows you that you're nothing more than a convenience in their life, believe them. Don't fight to prove your worth to someone who's already decided you don't have any. Don't pay professionals to help them learn to love you. Just walk away. Because somewhere out there is someone who won't need to be convinced that you're worth loving. They'll already know. The marriage that ended with "you're nothing more than a co-parent to me" led me to a relationship where I'm everything. Partner, lover, best friend, teammate, and yes, co-parent too. But co-parent by choice, not by default. Sarah thought she was telling me my value. Instead, she was revealing hers. And the truth is, someone who can only see you as a function instead of a person isn't worth the energy it takes to prove them wrong. The therapist who thought he could manipulate his way into other people's marriages learned that actions have consequences. The wife who thought she could have both security and excitement learned that greed often leaves you with neither. And I learned that sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is show you exactly how little they value you. Because once you stop trying to convince them otherwise, you become available for someone who already knows your worth. The session that was supposed to end my marriage ended up saving my life. Because a life spent begging for scraps of affection from someone who sees you as expendable isn't a life worth living. Now I'm living a life where love isn't conditional, where respect isn't negotiated, and where partnership means actually being partners. Sarah was right about one thing. I wasn't her real match. Thank God for that, because her real match would have had to be someone just as willing to destroy lives for personal satisfaction. I found my real match, and she's never once made me question whether I'm worth keeping around. If this story resonated with you, wait until you hear about the couple who discovered their marriage counselor was actually their teenager's drug dealer using therapy sessions to groom their family for his real business. Hit that subscribe button, because the most trusted people in our lives often have the most to hide. Trust me, after years of learning to spot manipulation disguised as professional help, I've discovered that the most dangerous predators are the ones with credentials and the ones we pay to trust. The next story will show you exactly how they use our vulnerabilities against us.